Hey, welcome to the show, everybody. My name is Mike. This is the Leadership Toolkit. As you know, your definitive leadership growth podcast. Each week, I get the opportunity to interview amazing people from all different verticals of business from all over the world. Today is absolutely no exception. I am stoked to be talking to Frank Caron today. He's an attorney, a public affairs strategist, founder of Oaktree Solutions, which is a venture consulting firm specializing in government relations, crisis management, and business development. He is former chief of staff to the New York City Mayor Eric Adams. Frank is also co-author of Everyone Wins. We'll share that a little bit later today. He is an awesome business person. He's an awesome person. We got a few minutes to sit and chat beforehand here. And he is a leadership badass, and I'm bringing him to you today. My new friend, Frank Caron. Frank, how are you today, man?
I'm doing great. Beautiful New York summer day. And I'm happy to be on your show, Mike, and looking forward to our, exciting, hopefully educational conversation.
Absolutely. And I mean, that's always the goal, is just that if we can touch one person that's coming up through leadership or management, entrepreneurship and business, that and I'm sure you'll have the opportunity to do that. So if you would take a couple of minutes here and just share with the audience, who are you, what's your background in business, where did you get started, and then where are you now? And let's sit and chat.
Well, I'll try to do that as succinctly as possible. As I was telling you, we got a few moments before to chat a little. I am New York born and raised, grew up in a gritty neighborhood called Canarsie. It's a southern tier of Brooklyn, a very much place where you learn how to negotiate and survive in the schoolyard. You got some bloody noses, and you learned the meaning of the word grit. And I wouldn't change that childhood for anything in the world. It was really incredible place to grow up. And I had the opportunity to learn many, many life skills living in Canarsie. My career has spanned, myriad of activities, but at its core, I consider myself really entrepreneurial. Even as a young boy, I would find ways to earn a few dollars, whether it was selling newspapers, selling stuffed animals, Christmas trees on the corners, cleaning the floors in the local street where all the shopkeepers were. I was thinking about it just the other day. I even put antennas when we had those old TV antennas up on roofs. I've done it all to try to make a buck and come up with different business ideas as a young boy through today. You've asked me about my comics behind me. Even that was of an entrepreneurial activity. I remember when I would collect the change I'd find in the crevices of the couch. And on Wednesdays, when new comic books would come out, I'd collect them all, collect the change, and I'd go buy my favorites and save them in plastic. And then later on, when I was in law school and struggling to make ends meet to survive, couldn't really take a full-time job while you're in law school. So I had to take part-time jobs here and there and needed money to survive. I sold my entire collection, which gave me some funds to survive through my first year at law school. And then later on, when I started achieving some financial success, I started buying again, and I focused on number one and first appearances of character. So it's entrepreneurship. It's not only about success and growth, but sometimes it's a lot of fun as well, and do things that you're passionate about.
No, absolutely. I love the fact that some of those things come full circle, right? You started off. So I'm curious, are all the comics that are behind you? Because I saw that when we first started talking. Because I'm a fan. I'm a Marvel fan, especially. Like for me, I think it's really cool that it goes from guys probably our age, that you're imagining that stuff in the comics, to now they've actually done a pretty good job of bringing that stuff to life on the screen, in my opinion.
I absolutely love it. Love them all. Daredevil was my favorite, though, I have to say.
Have you seen the new Daredevil that's
yes.
Love it. So I haven't seen it yet. I was talking with a young man that works for me, and he's like, dude, you got to watch it. It is so phenomenal. So
he's right. He's right.
No spoilers.
I highly recommend it. And you, when the last episode of the series is up, you're aching for more. So it's well done. Well, acting is great. The story is great. It's very much, represents the show. The comic and the stories we read as kids. So anyway, it's just a little
no,
that I'm proud of.
I think it's always fun, man. I grew up very much a Star Wars nerd. I still got a basement full of Star Wars toys. Same thing. Sold a bunch of Star Wars toys at a garage sales and doing the stuff. And then when you come back around to being an adult and you go, hey, I can actually afford this stuff now and the cool stuff, right?
Yeah, right.
Then you get into it. So tell me, I'm curious. Through your time, so you went through. You've been an attorney. You had all kinds of very colorful, business and political background. You mentioned when we were talking beforehand, Marines, and you said you had some really invaluable experience going through some of that. Can you expand on, what are some of the things that you took away from your, I guess, earlier careers or earlier in leadership?
Mike, I'm going to. It's a great question, and one that really I want to take a little time to answer.
Sure.
It was an incredible experience and the proudest moment, one of the proudest moments I've had in my life, graduating Officers Candidate School in Quantico. But I know you're a faith-based a leader,
Yes.
and that's a great phrase. Greater love hath no man than this, laid down his life for his friends. And when you're a Marine, that is sort of symbolizes the brotherhood and sisterhood, because everyone to your left and to your right will do just that. And it's a great feeling. And it's really amazing to experience that you're surrounded by individuals willing to lay down not only for their fellow Marine, but for their fellow Americans. And it was giving me the chills when I heard the Marine Corps anthem, and still does to this very day. But what I really took away from that experience more than anything else was learning how to overcome your preconceived limitations. And we all have them. We all have our insecurities. And Marine Corps is all about pushing you beyond your thought, your perception of your limitations, and achieving goals that you didn't think possible, and then realizing with the correct mindset, anything is possible. And that they really was invaluable to me, particularly when I was studying for the bar exam and working on really complex litigation matters later on in life. But going back to that bar exam experience and sort of layering it on top of my Marine Corps training was really the best example I could give. And it's really appropriate for me personally now, because I have a daughter studying for a bar exam as
Sure.
we speak here together. But I recall studying for the bar, and most students are very stressed about it because it's the beginning of your career. You themselves either borrowed money for law school, or parents paid for it, or they struggle to pay for it in some way, shape, or form, and you want to make that worthwhile and fruitful, so you don't want to fail and begin your career. But I remember studying and thinking to myself, wow, how fortunate am I to be laying on a couch or sitting in a leather chair in the Brooklyn Law School library reading a book, versus what I just came from, which was Officers Candidate School in the United States Marine Corps, the hardest training in the world. And now I'm reading in an air-conditioned room on a couch or a chair. And
Sure.
that perspective really gave me the utmost confidence, so much so that I watched the movie the night before the bar exam, watched the movie called Rudy. And I was perfectly calm and poised. In the Marine Corps, you have the leadership training acronym JJ did tie buckle, and each letter stands for another leadership trait. But the one that we always stands out in my mind is bearing, which is grace under fire, calmness under pressure. And I got to attribute my training in Officers Candidate School to a lot of my success in developing the correct character and particularly mindset to be calm under pressure. And whether it's success or failure, it's all the same. You just keep focused on what the task at hand. So if everyone could do it, I wish they would. But even if it was for a short period of time, just like they do in Israel, I think they have the right model. But it's a conversation for the day.
I love it, man. There's a few things, and I often take notes, and we'll end up repeating my guests a little bit because I want to make sure I grasp what you're sharing, and then I know as I'm learning, I know that the audience will have takeaways too. I love the fact that you said, hey, when you were going through the Marine training and so forth, you were able to overcome what are your perceived limits. Is there Well, before I ask that question, so the perceived limits, I love the fact that you said that with the correct mindset, anything's possible. You got to have grace under fire. I was just listening to another podcast recently, and I heard it was Simon Sinek said something about the Marines, and leaders eat last. And is that something? So I want to know from a Marine experience, because I have not served. I have utmost respect, especially for Marines. I have two close friends that served in the Marine Corps, and is that something that is taught? Is that something that's just expected? And why do you think that is, to lean on the Marine experience? Is that something you experienced? Was that, the leaders and the officers eat, quote unquote, eat last?
Yes, I didn't remember as much the word. Yes, that's true, but I more remember the front. And it's not about eating and taking, but about leading by example. And
Okay.
Marines lead from the front. We don't ask any of our men and women who we're privileged to command to do anything we ourselves cannot do, are willing to do, and will do. And that you really are trained heavily into leading from the front and by example and by doing. I have to say though, in the business world, that always it's not always the easiest way to translate to a staff, because
Okay.
sometimes staff needs a little more hands-on, some more loving care and tutelage. So it's one of the things I still work on and struggle with today from my staff perspective, because I'm more of a doer, jump in, you know, give it a go and learn by example or lead by example versus debating and discussing for long periods of time. But sometimes that's necessary. But I think the right approach is probably a blend of being able to lead from the front, like the Marine Corps teaches you, lead by example. Don't ask someone to do what you won't yourself be willing to do. But also, if someone's not really needs a little bit more and more articulation of and feedback, be willing to do that as well.
So I want to hang on that last thing that you just said. What you said, when someone needs more feedback, someone needs more articulation. Have you ever experienced a situation in business where you realize that that individual does need more feedback? You're saying, hey, I'm leading this thing, I've shown them, and they need more feedback, or they need more growth, they need more, for lack of a better term, hand holding, they need you to run alongside them. But maybe you're not the best fit to grow them or move them. How do you approach that, man?
Yeah, I delegate that. I'm not the. It's one of the. It's funny. We're supposed to be discussing some of my leadership experiences, and we tapped right into the weakest part of it.
No,
And it's probably the
not
weakest.
deliberate, I promise. I don't,
No, but I think it's good to acknowledge strengths and weaknesses and have the
sure.
confidence to say so. And I acknowledge it's not a strong suit of mine. I rather do and follow my example, and that's not always the best way. I acknowledge that, but that's who I am, and it's worked for me. But to deal with those who need a little more feedback and instruction, I tend to delegate that, and I hire folks opposite of me, so that we have the blend, and I could be myself, and there is a camaraderie. And I notice that I see how the team has a sense of camaraderie, and they give each other feedback and work off of each other and ask a lot of questions. Not something I personally enjoy doing or do well. So how do I deal with that? By hiring someone who does.
Hire, finding the right people. I mean, that's, I think that is a really good sign, and people need to take note. And yeah, I promise there's no gotcha moments. It's not, I do the same thing, man. Delegation is one of my toughest things, because I'm just like, yeah, give me that. I'll handle it and do it and go after it. And that's something that is difficult for me. But I think that is in itself a really strong leadership trait, Frank. The fact that you can say, hey, man, sometimes you got to find people that are opposite you, that complement you. And I really believe, and I'm curious what your thoughts are on this, when you're doing that, does your staff and the people around you, they see that, don't they? I mean, they have to see that you're
Oh yeah.
bringing on other people.
Oh yes. Oh yes. It's again, it's I lead transparently. I truly do. I speak my mind. So everyone has a role to play, and we do it collectively as well. But it's nice to see, what someone else is doing that you yourself are not really maybe terrific at or comfortable doing in your own skin and your own space. So I enjoy watching other people do things that I'm uncomfortable doing, or that I just don't come
Don't
naturally.
like, or don't like. I mean, let's be
Well,
honest. I
I'll
think,
say it more bluntly. I don't have the patience for it.
yeah. Well, I think that's one of the things that I enjoy having conversations on this show is so often people from the outside, they look and they look at Frank, or maybe they look at myself, they look at some of the other amazing guests I've interviewed, and they say, well, man, that person's got it all together. It'd be easy to look and go, oh, dude, not only do I like Frank's comic book collection, but this he's got it all figured out. But the reality is, just like anybody else, when you take a moment and you are humble enough to say, well, no, hey, you've got to add these other dynamics and these other pieces to it. I think that's powerful. And I think that's something that leaders in any industry need to see, that it's okay to not have everything figured out. You find people that have those pieces that you don't have figured out to figure out with you.
Yes,
Yes.
that's a great point. I want to dig into that just a little bit, particularly for young people, because I can recall. Look, we all have our stories. You get to I'm past mid 50 now. I'm on the other side of 55. So, um, getting there, and you have more experiences behind you than maybe in front of you.
Sure.
But I recall in my younger days, you being uncomfortably speaking, perhaps publicly, and looking at older successful lawyers, entrepreneurs, developers, and saying, "Wow, they have," like you just said, they have it all together. And God, how would I ever get to that point? And the real answer is no one has it all together. It doesn't exist. It's always a work in progress. We're all improving daily. And, I try to tell my son this all the time as well. Don't look ahead and project towards someone who's at their midlife point, or even out past their midlife point when you're 22 or 21. You take things in steps and you work backwards. What is your goal for this year? Break that down from the year, quarterly, monthly, weekly, daily, and you put together successful day, then you get a successful week, successful month, and so on, until you get to the point that you have a body of work and you'll still be improving. So it's a fallacy to think that way. And I would not want any young person ever to be intimidated by anyone that they think has it all together, because it doesn't exist. We're all work in progress. We're all continually improving, learning. I'm first to admit that. I think anyone who says otherwise is not really being truthful.
No, I think you're spot on. And the thing is, one of the reasons it looks like people sometimes have it together is because we lean into the things that we're good at, right? So that's what you see. That's what you lead with is, well, they're good at that thing. And so that's what you end up focusing on. We don't always see the thing that they're not good at, right? I want to lean into this a little bit. Well, here's a couple things, because I always get ahead of myself. So you got to go with me. My brain fires off this way. So we're just going to roll with it. A couple of things, because I did not mention this yet. One, if you want to connect with Frank and his company, Oaktree Solutions, it is online at oaktree.solutions. That's the whole web address. You go there, it'll pull up his website. So OAKTREE.solutions. Also, Frank's book, Everyone Wins. You can go to everyonewinsbook.com to get a copy of Frank's book. You can buy it. It's on Amazon, right? Amazon bestseller. Can you, before I go to this next question, because we're gonna go down this path, and then I'm gonna pull you back to what we just talked about. But can you elaborate a little bit on the book? What is Everyone Wins? What prompted you to write it?
It's a pretty cool story. I was reading. I love to read books on business and history, but those two topics I'm a voracious reader on, and I enjoy it very, very much, and I take notes as I read. But I was reading a book called Bargaining Brilliance, and I believe the author was a man named Louis Schiff. And in the prologue, he mentions one of his business mentors who helped him develop his success. And that fellow's name is Russ Prince, he described as this recluse who lives by himself in some compound in Connecticut. But he grew up in this place in Brooklyn called Canarsie. And of course, I said to myself, whoa, Canarsie, that's where I'm from.
Right.
So I sent Russ a quick email introducing myself. I looked him up. He responded within 1 minute. We met for breakfast, and we've been friends and partners and colleagues ever since. So he is a prolific writer and speaker on topics related to business success, leadership, financial success, family office success, etc. So we wrote the first version. What I was speaking frequently on negotiation and giving CLE courses on negotiation, which are continuing legal education for lawyers. We decided to write the first Everyone Wins book. This is volume 2. It's just a evolution of the first, or
Gotcha.
or it's sort of a just get a little more cutting edge than the first volume. About over a little 10 years ago with Russ, and we did it rather quickly, about 3 months. It was something that it's very, I believe, user friendly and easy to read, and represents really our thought process for success in business and really in anything, accomplishing a goal. So we then were speaking, and after I began Oaktree Solutions as a venture consulting firm, we realized that we should update the book with what we've accomplished over these previous years, and how the system that we teach in the book actually works for us personally. It's not just philosophy or theory, but we've applied it into real life success, and it's learnable, it's usable. There is a specific process that we articulate in the book. So we just decided to do it, just like a conversation we're having now, Russ and I, and we both looked at each other, let's do it. And just like that, 3 months later, the book was done.
I love it, man. Here's one thing that I absolutely love about what you just shared is it's practical and it's use tested. I think there are many authors. I mean, I've been guilty of this myself. When I was starting this podcast, and this is about my 5th iteration of a podcast, I've had others for various things, so faith-based podcasts and other things. I had a buddy of mine that told me, and I've shared this story many times on the podcast, so I'll keep it short, but he says, "Oh, well, didn't you come up with a podcast, framework?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Well, you should do it and start a podcast and do this." And I'm like, "Well, I haven't actually done it before." And I realized, well, that's kind of hypocritical, right? So it's one of those things, as you're sharing your story in the book, Everyone Wins and so forth. I think that people should take note of that. The fact that it's not just theory. Like, this is stuff that you did. It may have started as theory, right? But now it's actually practical. It's applied. You've used it. So I think that's very powerful. And I think so often we can fall into the trap of going, "Oh yeah, this seems like a good idea." And so you start to follow down somebody's path that hasn't actually tested it. They have no real experience. They have no real results. Have you experienced that in your life?
Oh yeah. Look, no comment. We're all reading about it on the colleges every day right now. It's
Right.
it's I don't know. It just
That's a whole other conversation.
a whole other conversation, different world, and than that the one that existed when I was in college. I'll leave it at that.
So here's something I want to lean into, because something we've sort of skirted around a little bit, and we talked about the delegation and establishing, because to delegate to the right people, you got to have a relationship with them. To delegate to the right people, you've got to form sort of strategic partnerships. I know in your background, you spend time forming partnerships with CEOs. You advise the mayor of New York City and so forth. How can do you have a strategy or a process, or tactically, and obviously we've got to bring this way down, right? Because you could probably go on for a full seminar about this. What are a few, I guess, tactical steps that you would use to find some strategic partnerships or relationships that can help you connect with the right people to help you drive results and propel business forward?
So I just want to make sure I understand the question. Like,
Yep.
is the question about how I advise, or how do I prepare for advising folks like Mayor Adams, or how do I connect with folks to help do that? A little
Well,
bit.
I think either or. I think from your experience, first, how do you do it? And then secondarily, if you're advising somebody, how would you advise them to do it?
Okay.
Let's break that into two.
So it will depend upon your level of experience. Let's say this. As a younger professional, I would write a list of people I thought were influential that I wanted to tap into their networks themselves, um, in order to, advance what my
Yeah.
agenda was, which at the time building my law firm, right, or building a bank that I was a board member of and employed by, or building a mortgage bank that I was the owner of, whatever it was. And there's a term for that called Nordell networking, which is the nodule, and through there are sort of spokes that have multiplier effects. Like there are certain individuals in your life that you just go to will have recommendation on a restaurant, on a
Yep.
lawyer, on an accountant, and I'm one of those type of people who's
I got a
constantly.
guy. I got a guy for that.
I got a guy, right? I got a guy.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. I have a guy. It's a great one. But so I would enlist folks like that, and I would then focus my attention on those people, and as a younger person. For me, it's a little bit different now because I have an established reputation in this city. The city is, one of the largest in the world, so it's not like I'm lacking of individuals, and so it's more about me distilling my time with folks truly seeking, the attention from me at this stage
Sure.
of my career, which is advanced. So it depends on where you are in your career, but wherever you are, to accomplish any meaningful results through what I just shared, whether it's in the beginning or in the middle or towards the end, you have to be an active listener. Because no matter what, people will only do what's in their interest to do. They will only perform tasks which are in their interest to perform. You can't berate them into doing it, shame them into doing it, tell them, think you have someone that owes you something. None of the above. It's all a fallacy. What really exists is direct alignment between what you want to achieve. If you know what that is, you should know. If you don't, that's another story, another lesson to be learned. We'll put that on the side for a moment. Assuming you know what it is you want, you have a specific goal in mind, your goal must align with the goal of whoever it is you're asking or seeking to help you achieve that goal. And we talk about that extensively in the book, Direct Alignment. In order to do that, you have to be an active listener. The opposite of the great Simon and Garfunkel, people hearing without listening, in The Sound of Silence. It's a great line. I love the song, particularly the disturbed version. But
I agree with you.
Great line. People hearing without listening. Very often, you'll notice folks are, particularly on even a Zoom, they're ready to respond quickly to a comment, good, bad, indifferent, without letting the other person finish and hearing what it is they're saying, so that your response is relative and relevant to the comment what was said previous, versus what you think someone wants to hear and your rebuttal or whatever it is. So active listening, tactical empathy is another way of, you've heard that phrase. It's been used a lot on social media these days by other speakers and folks who claim to be experts. But what does that mean? It means listening with empathy, tactically, strategically. And it's not a nefarious word or anything. It just means this is a business discussion. We're trying to accomplish a goal, whether it's mentorship, whether it's selling, whatever it is, listening to the objectives of another person so that you can align yours with theirs. If there's no alignment or some commonality, I don't know that it's going to have much fruit at the end of whatever it is you're trying to achieve. So again, it depends on where you are, what stage of your career, and whatever it is, you must be an active listener, and you must always try to find areas of common ground to build on, which always exists, by the way. Not complicated.
Absolutely. No, Frank, I think all that's wonderful. And I want to recap some stuff here because, and you stop me anytime and jump in. One, I want to make sure that I'm clear on what you're saying. One of the first things, like I asked the question, and I'm so used to, as a podcast host, right? We go through and ask the question and so forth. And most of the time, and for anyone who's tuned into this show regularly, you see the guest immediately, comes back. And then sometimes it's like, well, no, I meant this, or I said this and so forth. You did this, and you probably didn't even realize you did this because it's who you are. One of the best things that someone who is actively listening and is a good leader will do is clarify the question. right? Because I had a whole lot to unpack in the question. I said, well, what about this? What about this? Because how my brain works, I'm like, hey, I want to know all these things and I want to know them all at once. And Frank said, well, let me clarify. Are you talking about from this viewpoint for you as an individual, or if I'm advising someone? Because those are two very different things. And I want people to take note of that. I always advise people to take notes when you're listening to a podcast. If you're listening to learn and grow, write those things down. So that's a really powerful trait, is the fact that Frank even stopped and watched it live here. It's not like this is rehearsed or anything. We met 30 minutes ago. He says, well, wait a minute, let me clarify this for you. So I think that's something that people should take note of. Secondly, I love the fact, and I think this is relevant. You're saying if it's a young person, but I think it's relevant for anybody. If you're wanting to connect and grow with somebody, make a list of the people that you want to connect with. I don't think we do enough of that anymore. So often, because there's so much information at our fingertips that we're drowning in it, and so we go, oh, well, I'm just going to go out on LinkedIn, or I'm going to go out on whatever platform. I'm just going to try and connect with everybody, because if I connect with everybody, and it's like, well, slow down and be a little more calculated, is what I took from you saying that. Like, be calculated. Who are the people? What are they bringing to the table? What am I deliberately trying to learn from them?
I think that is a great point, Mike, and it just reminded me of where we are as a society today.
Sure.
Yes, we have advanced technology, and through AI technology and stuff like that, we're able to reach many people quickly. I don't know about you, but I get many emails that I can tell are not real individuals,
Right,
and that's great, and it's a useful tool in the toolkit. But the person who spends time developing a real network that has connectivity is the ones who are going to succeed, because I fear that going back to many young people are losing that exact touch, and the pandemic had something to do with that. We were all forced to work from home and do things we otherwise felt uncomfortable or couldn't think of in previous years. But let's not lose sight of the fact that we are human beings. We desire connectivity with one another. For the most part, there are exceptions to every rule, but for the most part, as a rule of thumb, we like connectivity. We enjoy each other's company. We look for validation from one another. So yes, it's great to have a tool to reach many people, but you're not going to build real meaning from that alone without real connectivity. And real connectivity comes from listening and deploying what we call tactical empathy.
No, I love it. And it is. There's no replacement for genuine human connection. We think, they're making movies about it now, how the guy falls in love with his iPhone or whatever, and there's AI and all the other stuff. But even that, okay, not to get way off on a tangent, but it's like, why? Because the guy's craving connection from somebody or something. And so it's like, I've never even seen the movie. I saw the commercials. I just know that like we're made to be interconnected. And I do, those two other points where you're saying active listening, and you made the comment, you said, let people finish. I think so often, and you can tell, and I had this shared with me years ago when I was a younger man. I had a mentor of mine. We were sitting and talking, and he was trying to share something that was really valuable. He was talking to me about communication. He was talking to me about listening and talking about growing a business. And I kept sitting forward in my seat because I was like, oh, I got this thing to say. And he finally stopped me. He sat back in his seat. He looks at me and he says, man, he goes, you can't possibly be thinking of your response and actually hearing what I have to say at the same time.
Spot on.
I was like, well, that stings. But I was probably, it was probably 20 years ago. So I was probably 30 years old, and thinking that has stuck with me to this day to take and say, okay, well, it's true. Because if our brain is whirring around in our heads and we're trying to think of, well, oh man, that's the thing I got to say to it. And I think that's probably even now one of the reasons I sit and take notes on the podcast, because I want my guests, guys like you, to really share that complete thought and share that knowledge. I can always come back, even if we're firing all over the board, we can always come back to another comment.
That's right. Well, great that you learned from that, which is also a sign of true leadership. Learning from and not letting your ego block that learning process.
Let me ask you another question here, because I think we get into this so often. Actually, I'm going to give you another sort of commercial break here. Just as a reminder, we're, I don't know, probably 2/3 of the way, maybe 3/4 of the way through the show. If folks did not write this down, you can get Frank's book at everyonewinsbook.com, and that's all one word. I'm not going to spell it out. Everyonewinsbook.com, all one word. Often I'll spell it out for people that are listening to on the podcast, but I'll steer you right to Amazon. I think, or is it on the site they can buy it? Or I think when I clicked buy, yeah, it goes to Amazon. So, I, if someone's interested in that, just the revised edition just came out here a couple months ago. Yeah. An updated edition. And then obviously also Oaktree Solutions. That's oaktree.solutions to check out Frank's website. So here's one. I probably should ask this earlier on, but I'm curious. And I think probably just from talking with you a little and getting to know you here for a few minutes, the answer could fluctuate, because it would be different if you're advising the mayor of New York City. It'd be different if you're advising the CEO of a company, or different people. But if I asked you the broad question, how do you gauge success as a leader? Because I think leaders, especially this day and age, people have all these KPIs. They have these, key performance indicators that they want to chase, and they want to know, how many people are on their website, how many leads are submitted, how many sales we made, how many this, how many that. But when it comes to leadership, in my opinion, often that is more abstract. Like as we sit here and talk and we say, okay, hey, Frank is a great leader. He's an attorney. You've been a strategist. You've done all these amazing things in your life. And so maybe each of those things would carry different KPIs for leaderships, so to speak. Could you give me 2 or 3 things that I could look at if I'm leading people to know if I am seeing real success, if I'm seeing fruit or not? What are some key performance indicators for leadership that I could gauge success on if I'm either a manager or a leader moving into that role?
Again, it'll depend on the industry you're in. So I'll share. I'll give a one answer and then share an example I just experienced 2 days ago. So, the only way I measure success, whatever that is achieving a worthwhile goal. And I go into every meeting with an objective, a specific objective, to come out of the meeting with a conclusion of that objective. And I set targets for everything that we do in business. And the only way you could measure success is achieving a worthwhile goal, actually getting stuff done, which is the phrase we came up with for Mayor Adams' campaign 2021, get stuff done. Talking about it, pontificating it, philosophizing doesn't cut it with me. So I was in a meeting with a chairman of a publicly traded company who will remain nameless, and his senior leadership and senior executives. And as he was sitting at the head of the table, going around the room about a very, very important topic, he was asking the team who was handling different parts of this project for updates. And finally, he heard, we're working on this. Yes, that person's working on that. We are having a meeting on that, and we got a Zoom on this. And he heard a lot about the wheels churning and meetings taking place. And he ultimately stopped and said, you're not effing hearing me. There are 2 weeks to go. I have an empty inbox, so no one has asked me for help on any one of these things, which means it's all done. Because if there were trouble or issues, you would ask for my guidance or help or questions. Since I have an empty inbox, I'm not asking for what's in motion. We could have avoided this whole meeting for that. I need to know results. When are these working on it taking place to finality so we can build on that because of the deadlines approaching? And I said to him later on, because we went to another event together, just him and I said, hey, you run a good meeting. He said, was I too hard? I go, no, it had to be said. And you were appropriate. I mean, look, we're all not children. And you're right. You had to say to the team, results. This purpose of this meeting was to give updates on progress, not to keep hearing we're working. And you could bring that down to microscopic level, I'll ask my executive assistant sometimes, following up on someone I need to contact. I said, "Hey, is that done?" No, I made a call, or I called, or emailed, and waiting for a call back. I go, the objective is not the outreach. The objective is the communication back, so I can make a informed decision on a topic. So
Sure.
it's all about results, whether it's the results of a question I'm asking and I need an answer so I can make a decision, or something very large that's relevant to a publicly traded company, or something that's very, very important for the citizens of New York City, which, if it was a country, would be the ninth largest in the world economically.
It's crazy.
I've always ran meetings and involved myself into matters that have definitive ends and result oriented. And I would always back into it. Set a deadline. That's the day we're announcing this project. Well, we didn't get approved yet by some. No, that's the day. Let's do everything we have to do from now till then, and let's measure it each day, and we can and problem solve
Sure.
along the way. So I'll answer your question as best as I can by saying it has to be a measured, meaningful goal is how I personally, the only way I measure success. That's really
I
it.
love it. So I'll recap that one too, because the question I said, look, how do you gauge success? And I know that's a really big question as a leader, and you are probably the second or third person. I have a good friend that said the same thing. I was asking, early on in my podcast career, and I said, hey, what are some traits you would mention? And that was his closing trait of a good leader. He said they got to get results. He says people don't follow people because they think they do, so like you said, getting stuff done. So when you gauge success, I like that you said at first, achieving a worthwhile goal. The only way you can know if you achieved it is you got to measure it. You have to have something measurable. And I do like the fact too, and I think enough people probably don't do this. Like, just set a deadline and then go after it. And there's nothing saying, and you correct me if I'm wrong, once you've set a deadline, you say, hey, we're going to do this, we're going to draw the line in the sand. There's nothing saying you can't move those goalposts later once you've made some other tactical decisions. But I think a lot of the time people spend so much time, and you said it, planning, like, hey, we're planning to plan, but they never actually execute. you know so
Well, I want to develop that last sentence a
yeah.
little bit, because I don't want to leave the wrong impression. You said
Sure.
they never actually execute. The only caveat to what I just said is, as long as you execute a plan towards a worthwhile goal,
Yes.
that is also I would consider successful. That means not to fear losing. Don't feel making a mistake and losing. It's okay. There's a great book that called "The Obstacle Is the Way." It's very stoic oriented, and very
Okay.
often you'll pivot and you'll get a greater success. So again, for the people just starting, and people, younger folks who watch this podcast, um, fear of failure. Uh, do not let that paralyze you. It's okay. We all make mistakes, but do fear not giving 100% everything you do. Do fear not trying. That is like the plague.
Absolutely. So final question. We're here at the tail end because I'm curious. We touched on comic books at the beginning. If you were a comic book superhero, who would you be and why?
Well, that's a great question. I told you earlier I love Daredevil, but I don't know
Yeah.
that I'd want to be blind. So,
Okay.
although I do love the story, and it's Hell's Kitchen, it's New York.
Sure.
But if I was going to fantasize about having it, I guess Superman. I mean, how do you not, the greatest power of all, or the strength of Incredible Hulk, something like that.
Okay.
Probably one of those two.
No, I was just curious. So, any final thoughts to take us out today, Frank?
No, it was great conversation. We touched on some broad, high level topics, and
Sure.
I'm just going to leave the audience with whatever I have done in my career, or whatever Mike has done. It's all learnable. It's all doable, and learn from mistakes, learn from failures. But what we just talked about, I think, was the most important point. Make sure you give 100% and try. Never ever be fearful of trying, because you never know how far it's going to take you.
You never know. Absolutely. Well, Frank, thank you so much for joining me on the Leadership Toolkit today. If you would hang out for just a minute, I'll go ahead and take
Yeah,
us out.
sure.
Okay.
Mhm.
Ladies and gentlemen, that is going to bring us to a close for another episode with my new friend, Frank Caron. Man, great conversation. Like he said, touched on some high level topics. I would encourage you go back and listen and take some notes. He had some awesome just nuggets of wisdom in there. And here's the best thing for anybody as you listen to or watch this show. A couple of favors I would ask. One of the ways this show continues to grow is, throw some thumbs up on it, share it on your social media platforms. Certainly that's one of the things that gets favored, and then the show grows more because it gets shown to more people. Most importantly, if you have somebody in your circle that would gain some wisdom from this and it would help them grow, share it with them. Be deliberate, and share the show out with someone that would gain some knowledge from it. That's always the ask at the end of each one of these shows. So I thank you everybody for tuning in and joining me this Wednesday on the Leadership Toolkit. I look forward to seeing you again next week. Until then, stay great. We'll talk soon, everybody.